All right, good morning, everyone. And welcome to the first listening session we have here for the Draft Michigan Healthy Climate Plan. My name is Jim Ostrowski, and I work in Eagle's Environmental Support Division. We've got a lot of people on the webinar today coming in already. So about 111 logged in right now, and it's climbing, just to let you know. I'm just going to run through some logistical details and then hand it over to James. So first of all lines are muted. It means if at this point they're all muted, so you can hear us, but we can't hear you. We'll explain how to make comments in just a minute. We're also recording the webinar, so if for some reason you don't tune in for all of it, or if somebody else wants to watch it, we'll be posting it up to our YouTube channel within the next couple days. All right, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to James, and James, if you want to take it away.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. Kimber, if you can pull up our slides. Just want to thank everyone for joining us today and providing some public comment on the draft My Healthy Climate Plan that is now posted to the Eagle website. Again, we've got a lot of people registered, a lot of people wanted to talk. You always have the opportunity to submit written comments. Those will all be read and considered as we kind of move forward. And just want to remind folks again that the executive directive, directed Eagle to prepare a My Healthy Climate Plan that was focused on greenhouse gas emission reductions. And that's kind of the focus of the plan itself. That's not to say that the Office of Climate and Energy will also be coordinating, climate adaptation programs and trying to help Michigan residents that are already coping with the impacts of climate change. We realize that these experiences are already being kind of had by people, and there will be programs designed to address those. Those aren't the primary focus of the plan itself. Again, it will be focused on the greenhouse gas emission, although you see a little kind of blurring of the line. I'm just going to take a couple of minutes, and I don't know if Kimber is able to bring up the outline of where we're kind of the process timeline that we're going through right now. She was having some computer challenges earlier, so she might be continuing to have those, but I can run through them really quickly. This is one of 3 kind of public listening sessions that we're planning to hold. And so we have today, we've got it scheduled from 10 to 12. We've got a little ability to run over, but I think we're going to have a hard stop at around 12:30 today. So unfortunately, if we fail to get to, we have 2 more listening sessions scheduled, and we'll schedule more if need be. If you can go to the next slide, Kimber. We'll then have again, we released the plan on the 14th. This is our first session. We'll have the next session on February 8th from 6 to 8 p.m. And we've just recently scheduled a 3rd meeting on the 14th from 6 to 8 with a focus on environmental justice. And we say a focus there, you can of course, raise any EJ issues you'd like today or at any of the sessions, but that one we will try to focus on those questions regarding the plan. The last day for submitting comments will be January 14th, and that will give the Eagle staff enough time to kind of sift through all those comments. We will then have another meeting with the Council on Climate Solutions to kind of go through those comments that we have received. And then the drop dead date, delivery of the plan to the governor on March 14th. Next slide. Again, these are the 3 sessions that we currently have scheduled here. So with that, I think we're going to jump right into getting comments from our participants. Again, thank you very much for participating today. We look forward to listening to you.
All right, thanks, James. And let me bring my screen back up here again. All right, so as James noted, we've got a lot of people on today's listening session, and so we want to try to get through as many comments as we can. One thing we ask you all to do is, well, we did ask when you registered, if you wanted to make a comment, you indicated so. And so what we're going to do is go through the list of those people first, and we'll call you up by your name. Kimber France is here to help me out. And so in the chat on your Zoom toolbar, on your chat, you will see the people that are on deck to make a comment. So you'll see, if you see your name on there, just be ready. When we call your name, we're going to unmute your mic, and then you can start your comment. And if you would, when you start your comment, please repeat your name, because chances are I might get your name wrong. So pronounce it correctly. And if you would say any organization that you might be representing, and then please limit your comments to 3 minutes. And I'm going to be tracking your comments. I'm going to have my phone here tracking comment time, and I will let you know when you have a minute left and when your time's up. And please try to wrap up at that 3 minute mark when I give you the end time, because you want to make sure we get through as many as we can. So with that, I think, Kimber, are you about ready to, good, I see you did that. So, oh, I want to introduce Corey Conley is also here. So Corey, did you want to say hi?
Yeah, sure. Hey, everyone. Corey Connolly. I recently joined the team here, leading the Office of Climate and Energy, and I'm really grateful for everyone joining and looking forward to hearing feedback.
All right. Thanks, Corey. So yeah, we'll be listening in. Yeah, it's pretty simple. We'll call your name, unmute your mic, and you can make your comments. So if you look in the chat, looks like we got our first couple of people up there. And by the way, just to mention, if you didn't say you wanted to comment and you still want to comment, you change your mind, you want to comment today, you can click the raise hand icon. And after we're done with the people that pre-registered and signed up, we will go through the people with their hands raised and go through them next. It doesn't look like we have anybody on the phone, but if we did have somebody on the phone, you'll type #2 on your phone, and that'll let us know you want to make a comment. All right, so with that, let's get going with comments. The first is Jesse Deerenwater, and then after Jesse, it's Mary Rolo. So I'm got to find Jesse's name here. And by the way, it does take me a minute to find the names and unmute you, so you have to stand by. While I do that. Oh, there you go. So Jesse, you should be able to unmute your mic and come on.
Greetings. Before I start my time, I'd like to, I dropped the thing in the Q&A about being able to see the other participants and know at least the number of other participants that are on the call. I feel like that's important. A lot of the other calls, like the NRC and, just different agencies usually put that up there so people can know, how many other people are on the call and different things like that. But yeah. I'll go ahead and jump into my thing. Sio Tohiju, my name is Jesse Deerenwater. I'm Gaduagi, a citizen of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma, a member of Citizens Resistance at Fermi 2, CRAFT for short. We're based in Wawayamtanong, where the curved shores meet. This is AKA Detroit and metro areas. We are on the traditional homelands of the Anishinaabe Three Fires Confederacy, which is made up of Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomis people, of whom I share blood and family with. I originally come from a Cherokee community in Northeast Oklahoma, and this is where I was first introduced to the nuclear industry by way of a uranium processing plant that ended up poisoning our people, beings, land, and water, and is still in major need of remediation because of lack of care and lack of accountability on behalf of the industry and regulators. And here I am again in the urban community with my fellow indigenous people, exposed to radiation against our will and against our knowledge sometimes. And it's not just us, there's also people of culture, the poor, and the working class. The organization I'm with, CRAFT, is building a future full of renewables and alternative energies, free from radioactive waste. For years, we've tracked and reported on and shared the story of the Fermi 2 nuclear reactor and the utility owner, Detroit Edison. The reactor has a long history of ill happenings. Workers had fallen to their deaths, suspicious trespassers were arrested, and contaminated water were dumped into the soil before the reactor was ever fired up. currently we're facing many issues with it, like degrading spent fuel pond issues, toxic algae blooms, uh, uh, thermal pollution, a new cancer study that's come out, and one of the big concerns that we have and a lot of other people in the environmental justice community, as well as other people that do not see nuclear in humanity as a just way to move forward, uh, is that there was no mention of any of your plans with nuclear, and there was some actual wording in the in the plan around innovation in areas of opportunity of need, and it says that there will need to be some new
Give 1 minute.
technologies. Yes, all right. There will need to be some new technologies, and at the same time, states and communities will serve as laboratories for innovation on smaller scales. I hope that that does not mean small modular reactors. They are not a new technology. The Fermi 1 reactor had a partial meltdown 50 years ago. That was a small modular reactor. The same technologies they're trying to push now. If Michigan needs to protect the water, we need to protect our people. We need to protect our air. We need to protect our land. We need to find another path forward that does not continue to put the burden on indigenous communities from uranium mining, waste storage, and all other things, and then also put the burden of a reactor community on people by increasing cancer rates, polluting the water, so on and so forth. I intend on having more engagement with you all and submitting some information, so I don't take up too much more time here. Thank you very much. Wado.
All right, thank you, Jesse. All right, so the next person we have up is Mary Rolo. And Mary, just find your name here and I'd like to unmute yourself. So you can go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Mary Rolo. I live in Grosse Pointe Park. I'm working with Sierra Club and other organizations to organize folks over here in the Grosse Pointe Harper Woods area on environmental issues. We're the Great Lakes state, the water winter wonderland. This draft plan is a great start, but it doesn't get us to where we need to be. Our children, and indeed all life on our precious planet, demand that we not fall short in addressing this climate crisis. This should be a top priority for Michigan, and our state should dedicate more staff and resources to implement a bold climate plan. The plan should more rapidly increase our use of clean, renewable energy and set a goal for 100% carbon-free power by 2035, including retiring all coal plants by 2030 or sooner. Michiganders need more transportation options, including convenient transit and safe biking. We must decarbonize our buildings. We must remove barriers and fully embrace solar, wind energy, and energy waste reduction. But this transition must also be just. Workers and communities dependent on fossil fuel plants and infrastructure, and low income and communities of color must be prioritized in this plan. Environmental justice advocates and organizations must be engaged in the planning process. The plan should prioritize energy affordability policies that increase coordination among state agencies responsible for energy, bill assistance, and affordable housing. Thank you for listening and for your work.
All right, thanks, Mary. So the next couple of people we've got up is John Owens and Bruce Woodry. So John, I'm gonna unmute your mic and you can go ahead.
Okay, hello. Thank you very much for this input and thank you for the work that you're doing. We're very excited about your department and Governor Whitmer's plans. My name is John Owens. I am secretary for the Southeast Michigan Political Committee of Sierra Club. And as such, I would voice the same talking points that Mary just did with you, but with a little context around myself. I came here in 1984 from Ohio. Michigan was flat on its back at that time. And one of the rallying cries for Detroit was, we'll rise from the ashes. And I think that we do have an opportunity with the work that you're doing and a few of the things that Mary mentioned, I'd like to repeat, that we can rise from the ashes. I'm sure you saw yesterday in the news, we had more deaths than births in this in this state. And obviously for my grandchildren and their children, I'd like to see this be the wonderful place that so many of us have been able to enjoy. I do believe very much that we should be more aggressive. As Mary mentioned, I will repeat that, more aggressive. We can do this thing. We are the manufacturer, of the country. We see the jobs coming back with both Ford and GM and what they're doing. I think we ought to be more aggressive in those goals in manufacturing to be able to attract the type of people that are going to take us into the next century at this point in 2050. So I think we're a little shy on the goal. I think we can get rid of coal plants. I think we should be able also in terms of helping private citizens get involved in creating their own energy with solar. And finally, and most importantly, as Mary mentioned, we're the winter wonderland. We're the land of the lakes, basically, stealing a little bit from Minnesota. But we ought to do everything we can. And I know we're making progress in terms of our water. We need to establish our wetlands, making Michigan a place that people want to vacation in and want to live in. Again, on behalf of some of the many members of Sierra Club, thank you so much for allowing us this opportunity to offer our thoughts, and to the other folks that just presented, thank you very much for being involved citizens.
Okay, thank you, John. Moving on to Bruce, and we're going to check out Bruce. He said he might be having audio trouble, so Bruce, able to join us or not? All right, so I think we'll come back to Bruce. He did send me a note saying that he was having some trouble. So we'll come back to you later, Bruce. Looking at my list, Brian Campbell is our next up. So Brian, I'm going to unmute you. So you can go ahead when you're ready. Brian, are you there?
Hello, my name is Brian Campbell. I'm an eco-modernist and I have a BSW, and I've worked in the industry for years in the renewable industry. I worked at A123 Systems, utility-based lithium battery storage. So I understand a lot about renewable energy and about battery storage. I'm also a member of Protect Nuclear Now. And what I'm going to say is that we need to, in Michigan, stop the closure of Palisades nuclear plant, which provides 21% of the green power, carbon-free power in Michigan. Almost 87% of all the green power in Michigan is nuclear. If we close this Palisades plant, it's going to raise emissions. Simple. No problem. It's also, this single plant produces as much greenhouse gas-free energy in a year as does all the wind, solar, and hydro capacity in Michigan, 6.8 terawatt hours. However, losing Palisades is worse than demolishing all the renewable energy sources in Michigan. Palisades provides 1/4 of Michigan's reliable, dispatchable, carbon-free power. And that's very important at this time because natural gas prices are going through the roof. And right now, Palisades is very profitable. There's no reason to close this plant. The closure of Palisades will directly undermine Michigan's healthy climate plan goal of carbon neutrality. Yes. for carbon neutrality and increase electricity costs to consumers. It will also eliminate 600 well-paying union jobs, devastate communities that host this plant, and diminish the state's economic vitality. We urge you to do whatever is needed to keep Palisades operational. In recent years, wholesale electricity prices have declined, but now gas prices are going up. Failure to correct these market conditions is threatening the economic vitality of nuclear, our largest source of carbon-free energy. The
Yes, sir,
federal
that's 3 minutes.
bipartisan, pardon?
That's 3 minutes. If you wrap it up, please.
I didn't hear what you said, moderator.
Yeah, it's 3 minutes. Your 3 minutes is up. So if you can just wrap up your comment, please.
Okay. The last thing I want to say is closing Palisades nuclear is going to be a disaster. It's going to also lead to a lot higher energy prices and the significant possibility, because it's reliable, of blackouts. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, sir. Go on to our next person. I'm sorry, Kimber, could you read off the next couple names? Because I need to look them up.
Sure. The next person is Mike Bussey, and then after that, Christopher Kopesha.
Okay. I'm not seeing a Mike Bussey on this call, so he might be registered for another one or something. Christopher, let's see. Sorry, buddy, you got a lot of people, you got about 190 people on, so I gotta find your names and unmute you here. So yeah, I'm not seeing Christopher Kapashia. Is that what you said? I don't see him either on our list of attendees here. Who's up next?
Christian Yonkers, Yonkers.
Okay, yeah. So I see Christian Yonkers. You can go ahead, Christian.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Do you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Fantastic. As you said, my name is Christian Yonkers. I am a resident of Hastings, Michigan, born and raised here. First, want to say thank you to Eagle for granting us this space and your ears. And I also wish to thank Governor Whitmer for setting ambitious climate goals. A little bit of context. As a child, I enjoy what I now recognize as the last few years of stable climate that stretch for millennia past here in Michigan. I remember snow deep enough to snowmobile throughout most of January and February. I recall stalking silently to my deer stand for November deer season, crisp air tingling my skin, crystallizing my breath, frozen leaves crunching beneath my boots. In late winter, snowdrifts of pure powdery snow beckoned me to play and explore their depths. This climatic sense of place shaped me and those I love indelibly. My youngest years were formed by memories of winter and reinforced by my parents' and grandparents' stories. Snow and cold are as much a part of me as they are to the ancient place I call home. The opening day baptism in snow, ice, and frost is becoming rarer. My wishes for a white Christmas grow more feverish each passing year. A part of my identity is literally melting away. These changes we've already experienced are fundamentally shifting the fabric of the state, and the changes we will undoubtedly experience if we do nothing or not enough will create a state unrecognizable to our ancestors. I refuse to bequeath this as inheritance to my children and grandchildren, nor leave a legacy of inaction and selfish complacency. Michigan is warming faster than the rest of the United States. Since 1901, the Great Lakes Basin has warmed 1.6 degrees Fahrenheit, exceeding the national average of 1.2 degrees. By the end of the 21st century, Michigan could be facing temperatures as high as 7 degrees warmer than historic averages, a death sentence for many of the state's cherished ecosystems and climate-specific activities. Though a certain degree of warming is baked in, we can take immediate and sweeping action to mitigate future warming and adapt to that which we cannot avoid. Michigan must implement a renewable energy standard immediately and commit to a 100% renewable energy mix by 2035. Furthermore, thousands of acres of our forests and lake shores must be protected as refuges for the many species that will be pressured by climate change. Without these refuges, many of our iconic species will be forever lost. We have the tools and will of the people to enact effective climate policy now. Solar energy is now cheaper to install than new fossil generation.
You have 1
Current
minute?
wild spaces, thank you, can be expanded to protect threatened species and valuable ecosystem services, while increasing accessibility to recreation and education for every Michigander. I call on Eagle to amend the Healthy Climate Plan to implement the solutions that science requires in order to stay the disaster. The Healthy Climate Plan is our chance to enact permanent and effective solutions to protect the state of Michigan. Doing too little means wasting time that we don't have and a chance we will not get again. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thanks, Christian. Okay, Kimber, who's up next?
Next up is Calandra Jones, and then Dietmar Dietering.
Okay, I'm not seeing Calandra in attendance today. I think I did see Dietmar, yes, okay. You're unmuted, Dietmar. Go
Yes.
ahead, yep.
Okay, thank you. My name is Dietmar Dietering. I live in New York City, and I'm a big supporter of all plans to decarbonize our economies and clean up the air we breathe. The situation in Michigan appears to mirror the one in New York, a proud state that is very engaged in climate protection, but ignores the tragic loss of nuclear generation at the very same time. New York just lost the Indian Point nuclear plant, which was generating 2.5 times the electricity generated by all the wind and solar capacity in the state. Michigan is about to lose Palisades generating station in a few months. This plant generates more electricity than all of Michigan's current solar, wind, and hydro generation. Only wind and solar can be scaled, but these energy sources are intermittent and need to be matched by increased transmission, storage, and backup capacities. These investments are costly and bad for the environment. Much electricity generated by renewable sources will have to be wasted, curtailed, and full decarbonization will be extremely difficult. Palisades produces electricity around the clock, reliably through good and bad weather. It does not need backup or storage, and the transmission lines already exist. This state treasure, however, is about to shut down. The operator wants out, and there is no buyer for the electricity. If it shuts down, it will be permanent and premature, since the plant is licensed to operate for another 9 years. Michigan should not let this go to waste. Catching up on the lost clean generation will be a giant step backwards and make the important task of decarbonization much more difficult. The federal government is now offering assistance to struggling nuclear plants in recognition of their environmental benefits. Michigan should use this federal support and find a new operator and a buyer for the generated electricity. This is the easiest, most effective, and most immediate action Michigan can take to protect our global climate. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your comment. Okay, next up, Kimber.
Diane Corpelongo, and then Marcia Wheaton.
Okay, Diana, I've unmuted you. You can go ahead and go when you're ready.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for hosting this listening session after the draft plan has been released. I appreciate having the time to have read it and the thoughts that have gone into it. I do want to start by saying that I am most interested in the work that is being done in the buildings working group. The first thing I'd like to point out is that the current stance for building and working groups is to enhance energy waste reduction programs. That's great. I really appreciate the energy efficiency industry in Michigan, and I've worked in it for a very long time. However, there has been no note that it needs to fundamentally be changed. Currently, EWR is structured in a way that does not support any customer who is interested in changing their fuel type. As someone that's worked in the energy efficiency industry for over 10 years, I have received calls from residential customers of almost every electric utility in the state asking for information on heat pumps. Unfortunately, I do have to let them know that they won't be able to receive any rebates that are posted on their websites. Electrification is somewhat glossed over in this plan, and we need to make it so that every customer who is paying into energy waste reduction, whether they choose to maintain efficient natural gas infrastructure or switch to high efficiency heat pumps, that they're given that opportunity. Currently, the most high efficiency heat pumps on the market, such as ductless heat pumps, which have upwards of $1,000 rebate from some utilities like DTE, are only available to customers with electric baseboard heat. However, these are significant energy saving solutions for the 100,000+ homes with boilers and other forms of electric heat or comfort concerns. So I ask that you make sure that when this plan is no longer in draft form, it does make sure that there are incentives available to customers that are switching from natural gas or propane, fuel oil, wood, or any carbon generating fuel to electric sources. I'd also like to point out that I support all of the Sierra Club's initiatives. As for electrification of buildings specifically, you point out, as according to RMI and Rewiring America, that at least 39% of Michigan households could save money. And that's true. And I just want to point out that there isn't necessarily significant need for utility rate design change to support this, but the utilities must educate their customers on the rates that are appropriate for electric-based space heating. So therefore, a customer with electric heat should not be using the traditional standard residential whole house rate. They should be using the interruptible space conditioning rate, which based on 2002 kilowatt hours in the use of December, if I had the customer switch from the residential electric service rate to the interruptible service rate, they would have saved over $100 a month. It is simply a need for utilities to educate their customers on their complicated rate plans. Please help the residential community by supporting clarity in the plans, including changing EWR to allow for fuel switching and to allow electrification in a greater scale than just a study. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Diana. For those of you that might have joined a little bit later, just want to remind you that we are now going through all the list of people who, when they registered, indicated they wanted to make a comment. When we're done going through that list, we will then open it up for anybody else that would like to make a comment. Just a reminder, please try to keep your comments to 3 minutes maximum, and I'm letting you know when you have a minute left and when you've reached a 3-minute limit. Also, if you have like longer comments that you want to make, remember, you can send it in via email. So if you have a longer statement or comments you'd like to make, the email address is up on the screen. You can send it directly to us using that email address, so you all know. So looking up at our list of people who are wanting to comment, Kimber, Marsha Wheaton is not in attendance, but it looks like we got Robert Laporte's up after that. And after Robert is Gary Kahanek. So Robert, I'm going to open up your line and you can start your comment when you're ready.
Thank you, Jim. I hope you can hear me all right.
Yes.
So I'm a retired oncologist and extremely interested in the human health effects of climate change, which is what I've been studying for about 4 years now. I have been on several EGLE webinars, and I want to thank EGLE, especially Next Cycle, for the work that they're doing with trying to get our emissions reduced by diverting organic waste from landfills. It's a great plan, very much needed plan, and thank you for doing that. The other issues as far as emissions that I work on continue to be trying to get the state of Michigan to enhance or to put into place an ordinance for idling automobiles and trucks, especially in downtown areas, because your study and all the good study that was done recently and what we're talking about, your draft, does point out the importance of micropollutants. But what I'd like to say today and address is that I want Michigan environmentalists and activists to know how dangerous our fracking is. I believe that there's still quite a bit of fracking, especially around the Kalkaska area. And this can give off devastating amounts of methane emissions. It's been well documented that methane is a highly volatile greenhouse gas, about 80 times that of the equivalent of carbon or CO2, and that it does in fact present a huge risk of not only high methane emissions as high greenhouse gas emissions. And since that's what we're talking about today, I think that that needs to be addressed, and it's a very important issue. I mean, we have to remember all these discussions about the rights of nature. We can't just turn over the Asable or the Manistee River basins and watersheds to the wealthy, privileged corporations and people that run them.
You have 1 minute.
It's an alive and breathing ecosystem, and we need to protect it. There have been deadly carcinogens found in underground water from fracking, whether it's from the sheath fractures or whatnot. There are earthquakes associated with fracking. Please have Eagle and the state of Michigan and all of the important people that live here address fracking to get it stopped. There's many states that have now banned fracking. That's all I have to say. Thank you for giving me the time.
Okay, thank you, sir, for your comment. Next up is Gary Kahanek. And after that, it's Alyssa Hayes. So Gary, I'm going to unmute your mic. Should be able to go.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
All right, thank you, Jim. My name is Gary Kahanek. I'm a resident of Arkansas, but I consider Michigan to be my home state, as most of my extended family lives there, and University of Michigan is my alma mater. I represent a group called Climate Coalition, which is comprised of members and organizations across the country and also internationally. Our position is that climate change is real. It's extremely important that we deal with it. And we see the infighting between pro-nuclear folks and pro-renewables folks as being counterproductive. We're talking about emissions, carbon emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, and we believe that nuclear is an extremely important part of the mix. The Michigan Healthy Climate Plan is great. Well, we love to focus on climate mitigation, but its single biggest flaw is that it is setting out a goal of 100% renewables. The recent global scientific consensus is that nuclear is a key component of any credible climate plan going forward. And we have this in an existence proof of the only modern societies, countries, and regions that have successfully decarbonized their electricity grid have done it with a combination of nuclear and hydro. And at the same time, countries that have strived for high renewables build-outs have resulted in extremely high costs, both system costs and costs to ratepayers for power, very modest emissions reductions, unreliable grids, and increased dependence on fossil fuels. Additionally, renewables require massive amounts of landscape. Land use conflicts and public opposition to siting of large industrial solar and wind landscapes already are severely limiting large-scale deployments of renewables. So again, this is not to say that we shouldn't have renewables, but it's been shown that a reasonable optimal combination of nuclear complementing renewables where they make sense is by far the quickest, cheapest, and most effective decarbonizing plan going forward. And I'd like to echo earlier comments that Palisades is the best example. Again, if that plant closes, it's the same or worse as demolishing all of the renewables that have been built in Michigan to date. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your comment today. Next up is Alyssa Hayes. So Alyssa, I'm going to mute your mic and you can go ahead.
Can you hear me all right, Jim?
Yes, we can.
Thank you so much. My name is Alyssa. I am a woman of color from a low-income household, and I am also a proud graduate student at the University of Tennessee studying nuclear fusion, but I am speaking to you today as an environmentalist and a clean energy advocate, and my home is in Gurnee, Illinois, which is just across Lake Michigan from the Palisades nuclear power plant in Michigan. Near my hometown of Gurnee, just about 10-15 minutes away, is the decommissioned remnants of the Zion nuclear power plant. And I, growing up, saw the aftermath of what it looks like for a community, especially a low-income community, when a plant is decommissioned, what it looks like to lose that $20 million in tax revenue, and what that looks like for schools. Zion now spends about $3,000 less per student than neighboring schools. But I also wanted to address the comments made by the first two commenters, Jesse Deerenwater, because I also recognize the dangers of specifically that uranium mining has historically posed to particularly indigenous communities across the United States. And that is very real, and something that the nuclear industry needs to take a bigger responsibility for cleaning up after. However, at the same time, I also agree with the comments of Mary Rowley, I believe, I apologize if I mispronounce your name, about how we need to take greater action in terms of the climate crisis right now, and making sure that we're producing as much clean energy as possible and not replacing our clean energy sources with carbon emitting sources. And every single time a nuclear power plant has been prematurely decommissioned in the United States, it has been replaced with fossil fuels, specifically natural gas. Every time a nuclear plant is shut down, there has to be more fracking in order to provide more natural gas, per the comments of Robert Laporte. And those are also things that I don't want to see, things that are harmful to communities, especially when we look at through the lens of environmental justice. Right now, as of October 2021, nuclear produced 77% of all Michigan clean carbon-free electricity. Palisades represents one of those just 3 nuclear power plants producing 20% of all Michigan nuclear power. So I urge, anybody with any sense, with any amount of power in the state of Michigan, to pursue pathways to save the Palisades plant from decommissioning, so that we do not see it replaced with natural gas, and include ways that they can be better about protecting their at-risk communities, particularly communities of color and low-income communities as well, from any public safety hazards. So all of those I urge you to do kind of in tandem, without shutting the plant down. So thank you very much.
All right, thanks for your comment today. Okay, up next was Suru Senarante, I think is how you pronounce his name. Although I do not see Suru in attendance. If you're under a different, oh, there you are. Okay. Oh, if you would raise your hand, Suru, and there you are. Okay, I didn't see you there before. I will unmute your mic and you can go ahead.
Hi, thank you again for taking this time. Appreciate your everybody's taking the climate situation in earnest, and looking forward to contributing what I can. So I live in New York. I've been a long fan of Michigan. So I wanted to bring up the issue of providing a climate solution, providing climate solutions while preserving human prosperity, human dignity, and the kind of means to get there. So as of now, most of the carbon-free energy in Illinois comes from its nuclear fleet, and all that is built and operational. Obviously, no more money is needed to bring them online, and no more time is needed to bring them online. And I fear the pending potential closure of the Palisades plant would set Michigan back decades, possibly, because currently this one plant is responsible for about 1/4 of the reliable carbon-free energy, electricity produced by all energy sources in Michigan. Maintaining this plant by rewarding its carbon-free output would be the cheapest and fastest ways to prevent greenhouse gas emissions that would otherwise emit from fossil plants that will take its place. We've done the numbers for New York here. With the closure of Indian Point, we ramped up almost an exact amount of fossil generation, both in-state and out of state. And that's multiple studies have shown that's the case all across the US and around the world as well. So these plants are, this Palisades plants is permitted by the NRC to operate for 9 more years. And the prevention of the closure is probably the fastest, most economical and effective way to avoid the emissions of maybe up to 5 million metric ton equivalents per year. So thank you for your time. Appreciate, looking forward to a healthy climate plan coming to fruition.
All right, thank you for your comment today. All right, next up is James Hopp. And there's 2 people registered under James Hopp. So if you're the James Hopp that'd like to make a comment, if you would raise your hand, please, that would help me. Otherwise, I'll have to unmute both, I guess. Okay, thank you. And James, you can unmute yourself and go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is James Hoff. I'm with a grassroots pro-nuclear group called Generation Atomic. I'd just like to, a lot of people have said similar things, you know, about how Palisades is about the same amount of emissions-free generation as all the renewables currently built in the state. I actually have one specific comment. You have a plan for a renewable energy standard. I believe it's 50% by 2030. My one suggestion is that must be updated or amended to include all non-emitting sources, including nuclear. If you did that, it would provide a powerful incentive to at least keep Michigan's existing nuclear plants open. It might be enough to save the Palisades plant, for example. It may be a little bit difficult to get any new nuclear generation in Michigan by 2030, but at a minimum, if you made it a clean energy standard, again, it may ensure that existing nuclear plants stay open. Analyses show that keeping existing nuclear plants open is the least expensive way to reduce emissions. And again, just for emphasis, you know, it's going to be difficult enough for Michigan to meet its stated climate goals. We can't afford to start that effort by taking a huge step backwards. Imagine if you started your climate effort by destroying and shutting down all the renewable generation in the state. I assume that no one here would think that's a good idea. But even letting that one reactor out of 4 Palisades to close would do just that. So it's imperative that Michigan keeps all of its nuclear plants. And a big step in that direction would be to simply change your renewable energy standard to a clean energy standard that would include nuclear. And that's all I got. Thanks.
All right, thanks for your comment. All right. Okay, next up is Jim Nash, and after Jim Nash is David Graff. So Jim, I'm muting your microphone. You can go ahead when you're ready.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Great. I'm Jim Nash. I'm the Oakland County Water Resources Commissioner. I've been working on these kind of things for my whole career at Oakland County. I first of all want to say that Oakland County has started a sustainability climate change planning effort that we're looking to be kind of tracking the same way that the state looked to be doing. I want to say that my office in Pontiac, we took over the Pontiac wastewater treatment plant and we've changed it dramatically. We used a system called thermal hydrolysis to pull out about 5 times as much methane as we used to. We're looking at it. We're looking at adding a new technology that would make us the most efficient sewer plant in the world for taking methane out of waste to use for the energy grid. This would replace putting most of this solids from sewage end up in landfills where they produce methane. It goes in the atmosphere. So we're trapping that methane that now goes into waste landfills, and we're going to be using it. We can hold this. We're very airtight. We don't lose methane like they do when they drill. And we're not going to be using fossil fuels anymore to run our plant and significant part of our county, and we're hoping. So these are the kind of things that we can do, local utilities can do. If we invest in these things, if the state helps us invest in these things, we can help get off of fossil fuels without going too much into nuclear. You know, there's a lot to say about keeping nuclear plants that are active going. But a lot of the nuclear plants, if we're going to keep going past their lifetimes, they're going to need billions of dollars of investments. And if we use those investments in fossil fuels and then slowly let these plants die, including alternative energy, including storage, I think that's going to be a great win. I run my house off of solar, and I don't have batteries yet, but I will. Distributed energy is a significant way of doing this without the massive rate increases. I've saved money dramatically since I've had my own renewable energy. But beyond that, we need to make sure that we're doing these things. I agree, we need a much stronger renewable energy standard. Distributed energy can really feed into that. We need to have that. I think it's dramatically better than long-term investments in more nuclear power that damages a much smaller part of our country. A much smaller part of our country is damaged by nuclear power, but it's a significant damage that's hit on them, as people have mentioned earlier. Last thing I want to say is this has nothing at all to do with resiliency. In Southeast Michigan, we've been hit with storms that have had massive impacts on our economy, on our homeowners, on businesses. We need to have investment in renewable energies, but we also have to concentrate on resiliency, building our systems so they can take these storms. Every Michigan university has said that we're seeing much more dramatic storms that have extreme weather that we haven't had in the past. And that's only going to get worse. We need to address resiliency also. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for your comments. Next couple of people up are, looks like we got David Graff and Kate Madigan. I'm not seeing a David Graff in attendance today, so Kate, I'm going to allow you to talk up next. And then, by the way, after Kate, we did miss somebody. They were listed under different names, so I'll bring up Michael Busa after Kate. So Kate, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. My name is Kate Madigan. I am the director of the Michigan Climate Action Network. We are a network of 76 organizations and thousands of individuals in Michigan. I want to first thank Governor Whitmer for setting bold climate commitments, which is what this plan is set up to achieve. And I also want to acknowledge all of the work that has gone into this planning process from EGLE and the council and everyone who chaired and contributed to the work groups. Making sure this plan is strong is so important so that we can achieve carbon neutrality with the urgency that science requires, and also in the timeline that our state has committed to. And also to preserve the Michigan that we know and to prevent so much harm and suffering from the increasing climate impacts, like the flooding we're seeing in our state and the wildfires out west. So to achieve these bold climate goals, we need a strong roadmap to get there. We all know that. And in December, MyCan and partner groups sent a letter signed by over 500 people that laid out what needed to be included in the plan. And my comments today build off those expectations. The draft plan you've released is a good starting point, but it needs improvements. Specifically, The plan should more rapidly increase our use of clean renewable energy and set a goal for 100% carbon-free electricity by 2035. And we should only replace fossil fuels with clean renewable energy sources. For transportation, the plan should include more specific actions to reduce the amount that Michiganders drive and to urgently provide more Michiganders with more transportation options. Specifically, the plan should require transportation agencies like MDOT to include climate emissions in their decision-making and should establish funding for major expansion of public transit. The plan should also include more to decarbonize our buildings. It should increase the energy waste reduction standard for gas to at least 1.5% and should create incentives to reach 2%. And should also create incentives to help consumers transition off of fossil fuel heatings to efficient electric heat pumps. The plan must do more to advance policies that prioritize low-income and environmental justice communities. We are glad to see a Justice 40 commitment included in the draft plan. The final plan should also include major investments in weatherizing homes. It should eliminate the cap on rooftop solar, enable community solar, and make sure, we'd like to see more details to make sure the Justice 40 investments directly benefit communities, including by making communities more resilient to climate impacts. We will be sending in some more detailed comments in writing, and I want to thank you for this opportunity to make public comment.
Okay, thank you, Kate. All right, so we're going to go to Michael Busa next. Michael, I think we missed you earlier, but you can go ahead and make your comment now, hopefully. Michael, if you're there, you just need to unmute your mic.
I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we got you now.
Okay, thank you. And I also want to thank the governor for addressing the issue of climate change. I think this is a very important issue. One of the people that we need to address is low-income people. They need to be a high priority. Green Mountain Power of Vermont has a program where behind-the-meter batteries are installed at a reduced price. Their program can reduce the price of electricity for all customers and has the possibility to especially help low-income people to deal with the transition to a green economy. During the last Governor's Council meeting, there was some participants that indicated that there was too much to do on the list on the climate solutions plan. And the individual physics does not compromise. If we're going to have a livable future, we must increase these goals and implement them more quickly. The governor's goals are somewhat in line with the IPCC goals. Most climate scientists are saying that the IPCC goals are not aggressive enough. We not only need to strengthen these goals, we need to do them quicker. We need to also look at some of the communities in our state that are doing very, very good. What's in the plan is what Ann Arbor is doing is great, and other communities should be incentivized to follow what Ann Arbor is doing. We need to work with rural communities in the placement of wind and solar farms to overcome the resistance. Much of this resistance is caused by false information financed by the fossil fuel industry. For this plan to be successful, we need to get control of this narrative. This is causing some significant problems in transitioning to a green economy. All people need to be involved. We need to use rooftop solar and community solar that's, again, being resisted not only by the fossil fuel industries, but also by the power companies.
In 1 minute.
One final comment I would like to say is that nuclear, the people that are advocating for nuclear power, I would suggest that you look at the nuclear safety record. I want to thank you all for allowing me to comment. Also, I am from Swartz Creek, Michigan. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Okay, so next couple people up are Newt Nadelhofer and Lee Andre. I did not see Newt in attendance. today's meeting. So I do see Lee Andre. So Lee, you can go ahead and unmute yourself when you're ready and make your comment. Go ahead. Okay, Lee, we see you're unmuted, but we're not hearing you. You may need to switch your mic. Okay, Lee, we're not getting any audio from you, so you might want to check your settings. We can come back to you later. But I am going to, at this point, just keep moving it on because we've got a lot of people here in line ready to comment. Next up is Brandy Crawford Johnson. So Brandy, you can go ahead and unmute yourself now. Brandy, there you go.
I'm here. Hello.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Brandy Crawford Johnson. I'm an environmental and climate justice activist from Kalamazoo, Michigan. I am happy to see Governor Whitmer put forth a healthy climate draft plan to carbon neutrality by 2050, but I believe we should put forth the plan to become carbon neutral by 2030 to best protect Michiganders. Eagle must include in their climate change plan the option to revoke permits that will include increasing greenhouse gases and stop permitting factories that increase greenhouse gases in their operations. Eagle granted Graphic Packaging in Kalamazoo a permit to expand their operations in 2020. GPI's expansion will be increasing their greenhouse emissions by 221% in a climate crisis next to a fence line community in Kalamazoo. Eagle must protect fence line communities in Michigan from toxic emissions, heat rise, and health hazards due to environmental racism and climate change. Fence line communities face a 5 to 10 degree heat index increase compared to other neighborhoods. Fence line communities already face a 10 to 15 year death gap due to living in environmental justice hotspots. Climate change will only make this death gap worse. In order to protect Michiganders from climate change and health hazards in fence line communities, Eagle must stop permitting polluters who are major emitters of toxic gases and invest in protecting fence line communities with the Justice 40 funds as soon as possible. Thank you.
Okay, Brandy, thank you for your comment today. Okay, next couple of people up are Abigail Wallace and Maya Aronoff. So I'm not seeing an Abigail Wallace in attendance today, but I do see Maya. And so Maya, I'm gonna unmute your line and you can go ahead and go when you're ready.
Thank you so much. My name is Maya. I'm from Mason, Michigan. And I wanted to say I'm really excited overall by the direction of the plan, both by its focus on renewables like wind and solar, which are not only the fastest, cheapest, cleanest way to get to where we need to be, stay under 1.5 degrees Celsius, but also the ones that aren't going to have as many negative environmental justice impacts as some other false solutions. I wanted to suggest that, like other people have said, the timeline be moved up and the language be made in such a way to emphasize that false solutions such as carbon capture and hydrogen, especially blue and gray hydrogen, do not count in this plan. I know that they're not articulated in the plan, and I'm very refreshed to see that Michigan is not falling for these false narratives that are quite literally paid for by the fossil fuel industry. But I would like to see that more emphasized so that there's not an opportunity for fossil fuel companies and corporations to create future sacrifice zones and sort of perpetuate their own relevance through false solutions when we have quicker, faster ways to get there, which may or may not include nuclear depending on the local context. And I also would like to see more of concrete commitments on the environmental justice side. I think it's great that environmental justice is raised and we're talking about things like public transportation, things like good jobs. And I think there could be some more concrete commitments, speaking to things that haven't been raised yet. For example, I think that there could be some concrete commitments on what kind of contracts are being given for this renewable transition, and are they paying a livable wage, for example. Also, in the other examples, like how can we transition to more community-oriented ownership? So community solar is amazing. Solar is a great transition tool, so is wind. But how can we make sure that the maximum benefits are getting to communities, especially frontline low-income communities, as opposed to utility companies, through like a diversity of community wind and solar models, including community ownership, public ownership. And then finally, something that I felt was missing from the plan but could be very powerful is the concept of free, prior, and informed consent for Indigenous communities, as well as the possibility of land returns and land consultations with Indigenous communities. I think that there's a lot of knowledge that Michigan's Indigenous communities have with respect to things like wetlands restoration, with respect to things like transition to renewables and a just transition. And there's an opportunity here, right? As we transition to a green economy, it's not just about literally saving the world with one shot that we have, in the next 10 years, although it's also about that. But we have the opportunity to really repair past harm as well, whether it's in Bay Mills or whether it's in Detroit. There's opportunities to target investments and focus and care into the communities who've been most harmed in the past by our aggressive pursuit of industry. And I think that land back to Indigenous communities is one way to do that. Subsidies, particularly focusing on supporting low-income Detroit communities to get good paying, clean energy jobs, and to even cover healthcare for past industrial damage is another way to do that. There's lots of ways to do that. And so I think going to those communities, sharing these listening session links with them, having public meetings where it's not just people already involved in organizations. And I think that goes for rural communities too. In Illinois, for example.
Maya, that's over 3 minutes. So
okay, sorry. I'll just finish my sentence that basically in Illinois, there was a huge benefit to community wind because farmers were actually engaged and they were able to profit off of the wind industry while not sacrificing any of their land because you can farm around the turbines. So that's why you see, not Illinois, Iowa. So that's why you see Iowa absolutely coated in wind turbines, and the rural communities are loving it. So I think that's something that we could bring into the conversation in Michigan. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Maya. And remember, for anybody, if you have additional comments you'd like to make, you can always email them to our email box, which is on your screen. All right, so looking at my list of who's up next, looks like we got Martin Kushler and then Michael Mulberry. So I know I did see Martin. So Martin, you can go ahead and unmute your line and go ahead when you're ready.
Hello, thank you. This is Martin Kushler. I'm a senior fellow with the American Council for Energy Efficient Economy. I live in Wixom, Michigan. I will file some written comments on a few more specific items, but for today, I just want to make two particular recommendations. The first is with regard to the introduction to the plan and the rationale that is presented for pursuing the policies put forth in the plan. I was very surprised to see no mention in the report of the fact that Michigan is almost entirely dependent on imports from outside the state for all of the fossil fuels we use. According to data from the Energy Information Administration of the U.S. Department of Energy, Michigan has to import 100% of the coal, 98% of the oil and petroleum products, and 93% of the natural gas we consume. This leads to a tremendous dollar drain from the Michigan economy. At recent wholesale prices, that dollar drain is over $21 billion a year. Beyond any consideration of greenhouse gas emissions, increasing energy efficiency and Michigan-based renewable energy directly helps reduce that dollar drain. The data and the economic benefit of many of these climate policies should be included in the text of the report describing the rationale for pursuing these policies. As a personal note, I've found that the energy dollar drain argument to be quite persuasive on a bipartisan basis in many states that I've worked with. The second item I want to emphasize is that the plan should have a clear and strong recommendation to greatly increase the provision of energy efficiency and weatherization services to low-income customers. Although the plan on page 12 mentions the need to increase support for pre-weatherization services, remedy structural and safety issues that prevent a home from being weatherized, I don't see any call to increase the number of homes being weatherized. To illustrate the magnitude of the problem, in fiscal year 2020, over 339,000 low-income households in Michigan received some type of energy bill payment
You have 1
assistance.
minute.
But only 1,386 homes received weatherization that year. That would represent only 0.5% of low-income homes in the state. In contrast, the 2021 IEA report estimates that existing residential buildings need to be retrofitted at a rate of 2.5% per year in order to reach the goal of net zero carbon by 2050. Michigan is clearly far below the needed pace of weatherization, even among this presumably high priority target population of low-income homes. So my recommendation in this area is the plan should explicitly call for a major increase in funding for weatherization of low-income homes, and that the governor designates someone as a weatherization czar to lead the administration efforts across state agencies, the legislature, federal government, Michigan's utilities, and other non-governmental organizations to overcome obstacles and greatly expand efforts to weatherize low-income homes in Michigan. Thank you for the opportunity to provide these comments.
Okay, thanks, Martin. Okay, next up, we got Michael Mulberry, and then after that, Megan Owens. So Michael, you should be able to unmute your line.
Yes, thank you. My name is Reverend Mike Mulberry. I am a local church pastor coming out of Sawyer, Michigan, with a church in St. Joseph, Michigan. And I am also part of the United Church of Christ Council on Climate Justice. I want to thank Governor Whitmer and Eagle for their hard work and leadership in going forward. I am so grateful for this courage with what is coming toward us at this time. My comments may be a little bit more off the grid, but I think they are important nonetheless. And that is that with the provisions set for 2050, it feels like that's being done in a vacuum, not recognizing the policies and practices of other states and other people who will impact us going forward. And there has to be an imagination built of what it will take. And I would suggest that we need to move towards 2035 as a more targeted date. That is really important because there are people who are setting our imagination. For example, the well-funded people at Palisades Nuclear Plant who have walked into the discussion on an ongoing basis here today. We're all in this together. We need her to complement whatever policies and plans might not only meet our state needs, but what other states will be doing so that there will be maybe absolutely no action in one state that will offset all the great things done by Eagle and by Governor Whitmer in our state. I think it's also important to talk about agriculture and the fact that agriculture is involved with greenhouse gas emissions as well, and the need for us to make a turn with how we do food and water going forward so that we make sure that we are resilient and strong into the future. My sense is that we have rarely discussed agriculture as a leader in this, and we need to incentivize good farmers who are trying to make the transfer into a more resilient and more sustainable food and water system. We also need to center, as we've heard some of the great speech from Native people who their story and their struggle, and also what they have done, because they are very often on the front lines leading us out, and their science and understanding a lot of times is more truthful and understanding of where we are than what we've had. And please enforce the end of Line 5 and all other projects like it that make it impossible for us to get any gains. Thank you for your time. Thanks for your work. And I look forward to the great work that Eagle will do in the future.
All right. Thanks, Michael, for your comment today. All right. Next up, Megan Owens, and after that, Michael Schneider. So Megan, you should be able to unmute.
Thank you very much. And I really want to thank Eagle and everyone involved in the Climate Office for really tackling this critical topic. I know you guys are getting a ton of criticism, but please know that your extensive efforts to put together a plan that takes on so many aspects of the climate crisis are enormously appreciated by a lot of us. A rapid shift to renewable energy, more efficient use of energy, vehicle electrification. These are all really critical pieces of the solution. So thank you for that work. Now we'll shift to the criticism. As you know, electrification is only part of the solution to transportation emissions, the leading source of climate change. This plan has a lot of really good things to say about public transportation, biking and walking, but it really ignores the fact that transportation decisions have a huge long-term impact on greenhouse gas emissions. The actions of the Michigan Department of Transportation has really failed to acknowledge that, let alone take the aggressive actions that we need to change the impact of transportation projects. A lot of other state transportation plans are requiring that transportation agencies not only track the greenhouse gas emissions of their projects, but the vehicle miles traveled impact, and are requiring those transportation plans to demonstrate how they're going to cut greenhouse gas emissions. Unfortunately, this plan doesn't. I know that MDOT is staffed by a lot of really good people, and they have a lot of good things to say about transit, biking, equity, safety. But for decades, MDOT's largely been a highway building and road repair agency. My organization has been pushing them for 20 years to move away from highway widening and towards transit and other sustainable options without substantial impact. You've got to know change does not happen without explicit requirements. To ensure that MDOT makes the changes that our climate requires and that this plan works towards, the plan must be really explicit that MDOT must track and take firm actions to decrease the transportation emissions, or the climate emissions from their transportation plans. It's not enough to say, we want some more transit. It's got to be an explicit requirement in transportation planning. I've sent some more notes on this. I look forward to further conversations about ways that this plan can be improved to ensure that the vague goals that are laid out actually become reality on the ground. So thanks again for all you're doing on this, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
All right, thanks, Megan. Okay, up next is going to be Michael Schneider. Then after Michael is Nicole Biber or Biber. Michael Schneider, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. This is Mike Schneider. I live in Madison Heights, Michigan. My remarks pertain to the energy production portion of the Michigan Healthy Climate Plan. The plan seems well thought out in many respects, but it fails in one critical area. The plan doesn't include conserving existing sources of non-greenhouse gas emitting energy production. Currently, 80% of Michigan's clean energy comes from Michigan's 3 nuclear power plants. The Michigan Healthy Climate Plan doesn't include preserving those valuable assets. It doesn't even acknowledge their existence. One of the 3, the Palisades plant, is scheduled to be closed in May, just a few months from now, despite being licensed by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission until 2031, for 9 more years. This was simply a business decision made by the corporations involved. Palisades produces about the same amount of CO2-free energy in a year as all the utility-scale wind and solar farms in the state of Michigan, 6.2 terawatt hours. If DTE and Consumers Energy decided to shut down all of Michigan's wind and solar farms, you'd be up in arms. But when we're about to lose the same amount of CO2-free nuclear power, you've been silent. The effect on climate change would be the same in either case. I can only conclude that the focus of the Michigan Healthy Climate Plan is primarily about promoting renewable energy and not about doing everything possible to save humanity from the deadly consequences of climate change. Mother Nature doesn't care whether our green energy is from renewables or nuclear, and she doesn't care what year we become carbon neutral. The effects of climate change depend only on one thing: how many tons of greenhouse gases we put into the atmosphere. The premature closure of the Palisades plant will shift that generation to fossil fuels and will put a lot more CO2 into the atmosphere. The plan does nothing to prevent that.
1 minute.
More and more, we're going to hear of people dying in the poorest countries of the world due to flooding, excessive heat, crop failures, and disease. The most effective and immediate action we can take to mitigate the disastrous and deadly effects of climate change is to preserve the clean energy sources we already have, beginning with the Palisades nuclear power plant. Please don't squander this opportunity to make a big difference to mitigate climate change. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Okay, up next is Nicole Biber, and then Philip Lamoureux. So Nicole, you should be able to. Oh, we're having some trouble with Nicole, having a little bit of trouble. It's telling me that you need to upgrade your Zoom account or version of Zoom for us to unmute you. So you might need to bounce off, let your Zoom upgrade, and then come back. That happens every once in a while to us. So I'll let you do that. Go ahead and do that so we can let you talk, or of course you can submit your comments via written. Just raise your hand when you come back in and I'll bring you right back up. After that, we've got Philip. So I'm gonna have Philip come up, and Philip, you can unmute your mic. Here you go. Go ahead, Philip. You're unmuted. Okay, Philip, we're not hearing you. If you're talking, you might need to adjust your audio settings to have the correct mic on. You there?
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. You can go ahead.
Okay, good. Sorry for that slow start. I'm going to try and move quickly. Let me emphasize that we need to move the plan up to 2035. I know that sounds difficult. Any part of it that can be readjusted is important. And that's because, like they said before, we only had like 12 years. Well, they were really saying about 2030 needed to be things done. That's going to be hard to make a change like that. I'm a scientist. I'm a retired scientist at this point. Let me tell you that the information we have now is on a graduate student's computer somewhere, and that won't be compounded, reviewed, and published for 3 to 5 years to come. So every time the climate panel for the national government and everywhere else puts out something, they always find they're behind in each step. So we need to have the IPCC recommendations enacted as quickly as possible, because those are on data that was already old when they started, and we keep falling behind. That said, let us be clear here that we should not include in the renewable deployment stuff solutions going forward that are not viable and not really renewable and sustainable. And that would be biomass. For one, biomass is a terrible thing. That's actually unlocking carbon we've already successfully stored. If you have 100 years and you believe a mathematical closed loop story, maybe some other part is closing the loop, but biomass burning is just releasing carbon we stored. Hydrogen is a false plan. At the moment, we're stripping hydrogen off of hydrocarbons, using energy to do it. It's not clean and it's not renewable. There's been a lot of discussion of nuclear here. Maintaining nuclear resources that are already built is viable. No new nuclear, though, would be very important. Nuclear is not a solution either. It may not be producing greenhouse gases in the moment of energy generation, but the resources involved and the finances involved make nuclear a ridiculous build out, and we've got no place to put it. Maybe next year, the only place in the world, in Finland, will finally be open to put nuclear waste away for good at an extraordinary cost in materials and everything else. So, and the last one is carbon capture and sequestration. Again, that's not a developed technology. There's no way to do that. Trees do that, but everything else that we create takes all kinds of energy inputs and is not very productive. Okay, let me also say solar on every roof is very important. Distributed energy is very significant. It builds resiliency. We need to get more people in the game. We don't need to put intense amounts of money into the grid. We need to put money into people being in their own democratic power. If you want power to the people, solar on your own roof is power innate, and it's real democracy. So I really want to support the fact that that also is a form of solar that doesn't take up any other habitat, that is where we're at. And instead of giving money and concessions to large utility companies, we need to empower people personally. We need people involved. Thank you so much.
All right, Philip, thank you for your comment. Glad we got you on. All right, so I'm gonna go back to Nicole again and try her. Nicole, looks like you can't unmute now, so go ahead.
Okay, that's good. You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You're
Okay,
good to go.
perfect.
Can you please repeat
All
your
right,
name?
yeah, this is Nicole Biber, Nidijnikas, Waganakasino Dawa, Nishnabekwe, Wabananong Nidago, Michigidodam. So I'm Nicole Biber. I'm living in East Lansing, Michigan. I am a tribal citizen of the Little Traverse Bay Band of Odawa. So I was looking over your plan and I noticed not until page 34 is it natural features and food. I just strongly urge you to move this up in your pagination, but move that up in priorities too, because that's a point for immediate action that would have immense returns. So the discussion of nurturing healthy soils and agriculture and sustaining abundant wetlands and forests, that's wonderful. I'd also like to say increasing our natural features will be paramount. So we're talking about decarbonization, and the previous gentleman mentioned trees. Certainly the plan already cites the significance and substantial contribution of our natural systems. So in this instance, there's no need to wait for technology or money or worry about it over much. If we normalize and cultivate our sense of stewardship for increased biodiversity and biomass on a large scale. So, I love that idea of roof solar. But I'd like to say, as part of creative solutions alongside that, in terms of a democratic local agency, include the conversion of currently mowed expanses into pollinator habitat and rain gardens, and there's the mention in the plan of the tree canopy and how that helps heat islands. If you made this call immediate, as in this spring, for at least a 50% conversion of publicly owned lawns into chemical-free, water-friendly oases of native plants and trees, and alongside that, educate and incentivize private landowners to do the same. I advocate for this at neighborhood, school, city, and county levels. On a state level, using funds already marked for green infrastructure, this commitment to ostensibly less mowing and more growing would be transformative in a matter of seasons. I would love the reduced noise pollution. I'm sure many would. It conserve water resources. It's efficient. It's low cost. And again, that's local agency. The evidence of change would be before our eyes. That would give people hope. It'd benefit our mental health. Leaves can cool things off. It's the literal breath of life, regulates precipitation along with the clouds, roots filter water. I think we'd be pleasantly surprised at how quickly the earth could heal if we focused on those leaves, roots, and waters. So move it up from page 34 to, 1 or whatever it is after the introduction. You can make the carbon sequestration through increased biodiversity the cornerstone of this plan. Miigwech.
All right, thank you, Nicole. Glad we were able to get your audio thing fixed there. Let's see, going back to our list of people who have said they want to comment. We've got Paul Kerman, and I don't have a Paul Kerman in attendance. And the next up was Olivia Presley. And Olivia Presley is not in attendance. So I'm gonna keep working through here. Raphael Wolf is up next, and I do see Raphael. And then Rhonda Sanders Adams is after Raphael. So Raphael, you can go ahead and make your comment.
Yes, hello, thank you. Many great comments here today, surprisingly. It's been great. My name is Raphael Wolf. I'm from Kalamazoo, Michigan. I'm actually a House rep candidate in the 41st district with redistricting having been done here in 2022. I'm the Libertarian Party candidate. Anyone here talking about clean energy or green anything need to read the book Bright Green Lies. Again, that's the book Bright Green Lies. The My Healthy Climate Plan falls short, I think, in many areas, and is written by people mentioned in that book, the people called the Bright Greens. This document seems to me more like a political document and less of an environmental document. It uses the word equity 19 times without defining what it is. It also uses the phrase clean energy 37 times without defining what that means by definition. So the conclusion then is perhaps to include or create a definition section on what the authors believe the words and phrases are. There also seems to be accounting problems. I think another person recently alluded to that. There's no reasonable carbon accounting system to factor in carbon deficits. So as an example, a solar panel is hugely carbon positive from the moment it's turned on because of the credit on the carbon ledger, so to speak. It needs to be debited over time. It deposits carbon into the environment, the environmental bank account from the process of creating it. For example, you need to mine the materials like silica, copper, rare earths, and other things that go into making a solar panel. You need the process. You need to process and purify it. All this takes manufacturing and distribution, and a lot of that comes from overseas. So it almost seems like this document and this plan is a bit of greenwashing and green accounting book cooking. There are many mistakes in. Yep, there are many mistakes in the plan and inconsistencies, like on page 16 of the document, page 21 of the PDF, where it mistakenly suggests that renewable energy is cost effective as a result of deployment and scale, which is not true. Costs have gone down because of outsourcing of our industrial capital to China. You know, quite frankly, there are really no U.S. solar manufacturers. Only 3% of total photovoltaic industry exists in the U.S. So much of these solar panels in the plan are probably going to come from China. And I think this plan needs less partisanship. It needs to drastically work on the plan and critically analyze things in it, because it's grossly lacking. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right, thank you for your comment. All right, folks, keep going down the list here. Next up is Rhonda Sanders Adams. And I'm not seeing Rhonda in our list of attendees. So I'm going to keep going. Robert Lippert is next. And then after that, Stefan Aaron Basic. So I do see Robert, and I'm going to unmute you, Robert, so you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Robert, if you're there, you can unmute your mic. There you go.
Yes, I'm an advocate of methanol economy. I think that that the problem with solar and wind is that it only addresses the electric economy aspect of climate mitigation. I think that can only support maybe 30% of the use of fossil fuel. That we need to increase our support of methanol economy, because we can produce fuels like dimethyl ether that can provide diesel fuel for large trucks and trains and planes and other greenhouse gas emitters by producing methanol that is produced from the in places like Arizona by using solar thermal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comment today. All right, Rhonda Sanders Adams is here. I just missed Rhonda. So Rhonda, I'm going to go back to you. Hopefully you can unmute your mic now and make your comment. I apologize for that. Rhonda, if you're there, I do see you, and you can unmute your line. Okay, so I think we will come back to Rhonda in a little bit here. So let me just look back at my list again. So Stefan Basic was next, but I do not see.
Hello.
Stefan. Oh, who is that, Rhonda?
It is. It is.
Okay, Rhonda, we hear you now.
Yes,
You can go ahead.
thank you. I'm also advocate for environmental justice, and I would like for the fracking in Michigan to be stopped. Also, the private ownership of the Great Lakes, as well as implementation of more viable ways to decrease food desertations throughout Michigan, and providing more easier ways to receive more opportunities for those indigenous communities to get involved in the proposals that are offered through the Justice Forum. Thank you.
All right, great. Thanks for your comment, Rhonda. Okay, so we got a few people that I'm showing on my list that aren't here. Stefan, I don't see you on my list of attendance. David Crandall is next, and I don't see a Dave or David Crandall in attendance here. And again, if I'm reading off your name and I'm not seeing you, but you're here, go ahead and raise your hand and I'll call on you as soon as I can. Elaine, Elaine Silk. Elaine, I'm not seeing an Elaine Silk in attendance either. So I'm going to go to Timothy Cohen. So Timothy, I do see you there, and you can go ahead and unmute your mic and make your comment.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you for taking the time today. So first, I'd like to say that I think that the plan is a good outline of principles, and I would like to see Eagle take more concrete steps to specify how they're going to implement their broad ideals here. On the energy front, I would recommend that you guys consider requiring utilities to identify EJ communities and conduct a health impact assessment with any actions that would impact those communities. Further, I would also recommend pursuing policies like a DG cap elimination that would help expand rooftop solar access and allow people to receive proportional tax credits on their energy bills. Furthermore, I would also recommend an acceleration of the retirement of coal plants by 2032 and for all fossil fuel generation by 2045 without reliance on questionable solutions like biogas, offsets, or nuclear. And one other thing that I would like to mention is the plan briefly touches on this, but I think it would be useful for the inclusion of stronger language on the role that natural and working lands can play in the decarbonization fight, in particular with respects to wetland restoration as part of CO2 sequestration. Thank you for taking the time today to hear our public comments.
All right, thank you, Timothy. Okay, looking at my next up on my roster here, looks like we got Anthony Patriarch and then Tom Regan. So Anthony, I see you and I just unmuted your line, so you can go ahead.
Hello, Jim. Thank you, everyone. I do want to say, I want to take the time to say thank you to the governor for reviewing this with a modicum of seriousness. I would also like to thank Eagle for reviewing this and putting this together, but I have to say, people of this gathered committee, it is not nearly enough. It is not nearly strong enough. These ideas of becoming carbon neutral by 2050 and 2030, as previous attendants have spoken out and said, these are outdated and behind on ICCP standards right now. So we are going to be consistently working at a deficit. We cannot afford to have anything less than the most aggressive, the most pursuant of clean energy plans. I'm also very concerned that this doesn't have a lot of legal accountability for failure to utilize on the board laws, if not strengthening current EJ laws. There's no like environmental impact reports that are really like taken into consult of cumulative impact reports. And this is huge because like we have a huge issue of already violators of our environmental systems not getting taken to task for what they should be. So I also want to support rooftop solar. Absolutely great points on those that said it before. This does create a more resilient energy system. We get only a small fractional part of our clean green energy from rooftop solar right now. And it is a huge market that we can and must absolutely tap into in order to preserve our state at a current condition and prevent it from happening to get worse. We're going to be also needing to improve on MDOT and housing because we are going to be experiencing a large number of climate migrants and climate immigrants from communities that are not going to be as resilient as we are. So we also need to take public housing into cost consideration. And that winterization is a massively great idea, especially considering in rural areas. This plan has some great points and like some great ideas, but we need to go beyond conventional platitudes and we must push forth for the most aggressive agenda we can. We get one shot at this, one. And if we don't, we'll lose our great recreational areas in Michigan. We'll lose access to our clean water. We'll lose access to our agricultural expansive part of our state. We'll lose access to a lot and we'll be behind. We're already behind as a state as far as educational development goes. If we open this up to green energy and clean energy development, our trades could easily get into the 75% that would be needed to be competitive with the 5 surrounding states around us. There's a lot more we can do, obviously, but we need to have the will and conviction to push forward for this and to hold our leaders accountable to get this. We cannot have these false equivalencies of solutions as previously mentioned. Thank you, and I'd like to yield my time remaining to the next speaker.
All right, thanks, Anthony, for your comments today. All right, looks like we got a few more people up here. Tom Regan's on my list, but he is not, I do not see Tom Regan in attendance. Next up is Vivian Valdmanis, but I do not see a Vivian in attendance today. After that is Zainab El-Kolale, and I do not see a Zainab in attendance. And then we got Abigail Wallace, and oh, I do see Abigail. So Abigail, you can go ahead and you can go ahead if you want.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Well, hi there. My name is Abigail Wallace, and I'm here today representing the Michigan Environmental Council. We're an environmental advocacy nonprofit organization based out of Lansing. First, I want to say thank you so much for the opportunity to offer comment on this plan today, and thank you so much to Governor Whitmer for taking the first steps in combating climate change by setting these ambitious goals. However, it's our position that the final draft of the My Healthy Climate Plan needs to go much further if we're going to have any chance of avoiding the worst impacts of climate change in the following decades. On a personal note, I'm a 23-year-old lifelong Michigander, and I really love this state. And I'd like to see it stay beautiful and able to support the entirety of our population 20 years from now. All that being said, I'm going to focus my comments today on the building and housing piece of the draft plan. So a huge chunk of Michigan's GHG emissions come from this sector, but unfortunately, the draft plan doesn't include many strategies to combat that. The Environmental Council was glad to see the 2% energy waste reduction standard for electric utilities included in the plan, but feel that the state needs to do a lot better on the gas side of things. Increasing the gas energy waste reduction standard from 0.75% to 1.5% and offering incentives for utilities to strive to get to 2% gas efficiency would be good not only for consumers, but also for the environment. However, unless the state embraces electrification technologies alongside these energy efficiency measures, we simply won't be able to decarbonize our building stock in time, especially taking into consideration the long lifespan of newly built buildings and appliances. MEC would like to see the creation of an incentive program for air source heat pumps to help consumers transition over to this highly efficient heating and cooling technology, while specifically prioritizing incentives for multifamily housing, low income and BIPOC folks, new construction, and propane users like those up in the UP. And then finally, the state has an unheard amount of cash on hand to spend in these next few years, and a $1 billion investment in grants for weatherization, efficiency, electrification, and home repair would be invaluable in the fight to decarbonize our building sector. Again, thank you so much for the time to speak, and I yield the rest of my time to the next commenter. Thanks so much.
Okay, thanks, Abigail. All right, everybody. So Kimber, is that correct that that's the last of the people who pre-registered and indicated they wanted to comment?
Yes, that's correct. That's the end of the list of pre-registered.
Okay, thanks. So just checking on that. So what we're going to do now is, so that was a list of everybody that when they registered, they indicate they want to comment. As you can see, some people registered and maybe didn't attend today. That's fine. Maybe they'll attend in one of the other sessions. No big deal. Just want to remind you that if you do have additional comments, you can submit them to the email box that's listed on your screen. At this time, what we're going to do is open it up to anybody else that make a comment. So if you have not made a comment yet and would like to comment, you can raise your hand and click the raise hand icon and we'll go through you. And it looks like, holy cow, I got a bunch of people with their hands up. Okay. And if you're on the phone, and there's a few people that are calling in, if you're on the phone and you want to make a comment, you can hit #2 on your phone. It's #2, and we will call you by the last couple of digits of your phone number and unmute you that way. Again, same rules apply. We got a lot of people on today, so we want to keep it moving, let everybody get a chance. It is like 10 minutes to noon, so or 15 minutes to noon. So you got 3 minutes. I will begin calling you and unmuting your line. So it looks like the first person on my list is John Considine, and then after that it's Lewis. So John, if you're there, you can go ahead.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Good morning. John Constine, West Michigan. I'm not Michigan born, but I've lived here for the last half of my life, 32 years. My comments based on carbon price to put carbon pricing into the plan. At a national level, this is really a steady rising price on fossil fuels and using the revenue maybe to mitigate the consequences of rising prices. At the state level, it's probably looking at the carbon pricing philosophies and techniques of the utilities. I'll address that in a moment. So the removal of fossil fuel subsidies or privileges that go with that will go a long way to helping things. We want to use the free market forces then to drive the way that people respond. Many comments on nuclear, clearly a lot of people concerned here. The idea of carbon-free generation once it's built is probably accurate. I agree with the earlier speaker that if you're thinking about new nuclear, clearly you've got to price in the costs of building and mitigation of decommissioning. But I remain agnostic on that. Let the market work it out if the pricing messages are correct. But clearly the state sets some of the pricing mechanisms. The utilities need to find ways to make money without increasing fossil fuel. The plant over in Detroit, the natural gas, fossil gas plant is an example of, from a utility point of view, the incentive is to build as much as possible. We need to incentivize more strongly cost reduction, usage reductions, and find ways that the utility companies get to be the people you go to for a loan or to install a solar panel on your house. There's a whole market out there where they can be experts in. Remind you that car companies make most of their money off their financial systems, not their production. Finally, big fan of distributed generation for all the reasons given. One being that it gives agency to individuals, and another one that it's a way that you build support for all the other things when people can do this. Enormous amounts of money are spent in Home Depot each year. Let's spend a lot of this on going in there, checking out, not a kitchen upgrade, but a solar panel update. We've got to change the regulation for that. Ditto for community solar. I worked on some of this plan as a very ill-informed individual. Delighted to see it happening. I have no specialist comments to make other than we have a problem. The planet does not have a problem. The planet will survive whatever we do, but humanity, not so much. Thank you. I cede my time.
Okay, thank you for your comment today. We're going to go to Lewis Okun next, and then after that, Abigail Clark. So, Lewis, you should be able to unmute your mic.
Hello, I'm Lewis Okun. I'm a private citizen from Ann Arbor. Very uplifted by many of the things I've heard today, but I would like to draw attention two issues of Great Lakes water. We've already heard mention that we will probably get a lot of climate refugees, as we are sitting on top of a fifth of the world's fresh water. And that is an absolutely vital resource that's going to get scarcer and scarcer. We literally cannot live without it. And currently, our state is basically being robbed of fresh water already from the Great Lakes and from its connected aquifers. I would call attention, I believe it's Osceola Township, that's been in essentially marathon litigation with, I believe, the Nestle Corporation about losing water at essentially free. I mean, they're just not getting a fair price. I think it's morally questionable whether we should sell a drop of our fresh water other than for immediate human usage through our local systems. But just for starts, we're giving the water to major water interests. We're giving it to them. There's a token price paid, a literally virtually zero token. So we need to look at that. We at least need a fair price, but I think more so, we just need to control the outflow and preserve the resource. And again, this will become all the more critical as other people notice that they don't have water and the Great Lakes do. There will be a lot of immigrants here. I'm not anti-immigrant. I don't blame people for trying to go where they need to go to survive, but it will be a huge problem for us. And I thank you. I commend Eagle for offering these comments, and I yield back the rest of my time.
Okay, thank you for your comments today, Lewis. Next up is Abigail Clark. Abigail, you can go ahead.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity. First of all, I wanted to mention at the beginning of my time something that's been a little frustrating today, which is don't blame anyone, but just perhaps advice for the future. The number of people commenting from out of state has been a little frustrating. If we're talking about the Michigan Healthy Climate Plan, and this is something that our state government is doing, I would consider limiting these listening sessions to Michigan residents, because it also was a little obvious that most of the out-of-state people were coming in with a very similar agenda, and it seemed to be an organized effort. But I wanted to just say how this has been a great listening session thus far. Many people have made many excellent points, so I don't want to be too redundant. I would just emphasize that I couldn't agree more with everyone who is encouraging you to act boldly and rapidly at the scale of the crisis we face. We need to move faster on renewables. We need to move faster on coal plant closures. Something I would just like to take an opportunity to emphasize is something others have mentioned about moving away from burning fossil fuels to heat our buildings and to cook, and just generally electrification of homes in our state. We need to move faster on it. People have brought up the propane issue. It makes Michiganders vulnerable to price fluctuations. It makes us dependent on pipelines. You know, heat pump technology, as has been mentioned by excellent commenters so far, has advanced a lot. We need to incentivize a quicker transition to electric home heating options. And there is still so much that can be done on weatherization in our state. You know, there are so many older homes that are just not efficient, and they really, and, you know, overwhelmingly low income people are in the least efficient homes. So there's just really a lot to do on that front. And I really encourage you to lean into it. I also think that there is a lot that can be done on reducing vehicle miles traveled, reducing VMT by investing. You know, Michigan's way behind on this front, making options like transit, walking, and biking accessible for people. It's equitable, it's healthy. There are so many additional benefits. You know, we're a car state, but having cars be the only option is a form of dependency. It keeps you trapped. So we really need to invest in more options. And then, you know, the emphasis on equity in the draft was exciting to see. I hope the Justice 40 commitments are strong. We really need to invest in the communities in our state that are most resource constrained. So I hope that you continue to really emphasize that as a priority. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you, Abigail. Okay, we're gonna go to Daniel McCarter next, and then after that is Lee Andre. So Daniel McCarter, go ahead.
Hi, thank you for this opportunity. I want to make a number of points, a few of them quick, and then a main point. One is stop line 5, another is stop fracking, and another is let's dethrone DTE and consumers' energy so that we can have local innovative solutions for renewable energy. But the main point I want to make is about transportation. Right now, MDOT focuses way too much on automobiles, on highways. There should be absolutely no reason at this point in history that we are expanding highways or building new ones. All the emphasis right now should be on transit and, you know, maintaining existing roads and safety. But transit needs to be where the focus goes. We need to have MDOT be advancing high-speed rail to Chicago and Toronto. We should have MDOT advancing transit between, like electric rail transit between Ann Arbor and Howell/Brighton. Southeast Michigan generally needs a lot more transit, preferably rail, preferably electric. We need more bicycling infrastructure. We need more trees along highways to protect nearby communities from particulate matter. So MDOT needs to be overhauled so that it's focused on climate, so that it's focused on public health, so that it's focused on transit. And there's exciting new technology that makes electric rail more feasible using batteries. So we don't even need overhead electric lines necessarily in the future for rail electric transit. That is my comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comment. All right, folks, so it is almost noon, and we had this listening session scheduled till noon. I still have about 9 people with their hands raised to make comments today, and so I think, like James indicated, if James and Cora, if you're okay with it, we're gonna hold over for a little while longer. So we're gonna go over noon. If for some reason you have to jump off, I totally understand that. We are recording the sessions, so we'll be posting on the YouTube channel. So if you have to jump off and want to hear the rest of the comments later, you can jump on and listen to the recordings. I guess just fast forward it to this point and you can be able to hear the rest of the recordings or the rest of the comments. So we're gonna hold it over and keep getting through these. So we've got a few more people with their hands raised. We'll go through you, about 9 more people. First one up is Lee Andre, and then Lindsay Walker's after Lee. Lee, I know we called on you earlier.
Okay.
There you go. Go ahead.
So my comment is about narrative, that it's important that the words we use. I would love to see a report that never used the word natural gas. It only called it fossil gas. And this would help people like Jim Nash, who talked about making methane at his sewage plant. He wouldn't be categorized in the same group as all the frackers and all the fossil gas industry. The same thing's true with carbon neutral. Carbon neutral, I think, is a good phrase. Carbon free makes people wonder, you know, this must be impossible. When you look around and see all the cardboard we have and all the plastic packaging, all the building materials, of course, we're not going to be carbon free, but we should be, our goal should be carbon neutral. The same thing goes for comments about biomass. Burning biomass with carbon capture is carbon neutral, but the carbon has to end up someplace, and sequestering is not the right answer. A carbon cycle would allow us to use carbon, use it for products, take those products, disassemble them molecularly, and bring the carbon back to a useful purpose. And I want to really compliment Robert Lippert, who said DME, dimethyl ether. We really need a pathway that includes a carbon cycle. Even if it's leaky, we can always keep feeding the carbon cycle with renewable materials. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks for your comment. Moving on to Lindsay Walker, then after Lindsay is going to be Craig Bloomer. Go ahead, Lindsay.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks for the opportunity. My name is Lindsay Walker, and I am calling today representing, I'm an elected official here in the city of Petoskey, born and raised here in Petoskey. I also work for Emmett County Department of Public Works and Emmett County Recycling. So beginning first with, as a renewable energy community here in Petoskey, we have a 2035 goal of 100% renewable energy, by 2030. In order to get there, I believe that we need to have an all above the strategy for decentralized renewable energy. We are a publicly owned utility here in the city of Petoskey, so we belong to the Michigan Public Power Association, and currently, we need to, of course, remove the cap on rooftop solar, which is what Kate Madigan expressed earlier. I believe in that in terms of incentivizing decentralized renewable energy for our homes, individuals, commercial, and business level. Currently, the Michigan Public Service Commission is redefining natural gas as a renewable energy source. I strongly object to that. Renewable energy does not involve fossil fuels, and natural gas is a fossil fuel in its extraction, mobilization, and disposal. It is not a renewable energy, so let's not redefine what renewable energy is. In terms of, I believe that the plan itself is pretty comprehensive, and I liked seeing that sustainable materials management was part of that. So recycling and removing organics from landfills. Here at Emmett County Recycling, we rely heavily on Drawdown and Paul Hawkins' book in terms of those lowest hanging fruits. Removing organics from the landfill is number 3 in terms of how we can move forward to decarbonization and affecting climate change and global warming. Other things that I believe is shutting down Line 5. We should absolutely not let up on that effort. We need to be a model of how to responsibly and in a community way shut down ancient fossil fuel infrastructure. The time is up. 68 years for this pipeline has been many too long, and we could be an example of how to do that responsibly. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, thanks for your comment. Craig Bloomer is next, and then Jim Sherman. So go ahead, Craig.
Okay, thank you, Jim. This is Craig Bloomer calling from Dexter, Michigan. I'm a mechanical engineer, a retired project manager from the oil and gas industry. But the good news, I guess, is that I've devoted my retirement to working on climate change. The comment I had is around battery storage. The plan really doesn't address much at all on that subject. I know from my engagement with DTE on their green power plan, they're thinking about battery storage, but they haven't really progressed those projects forward significantly yet. And it's pretty easy for them to put up windmills and solar panels to drive renewable energy, but those are being coupled with natural gas power plants. And so we're not really going to make the progress we need to deal with the intermittency issue of solar and wind. As far as suggestions around battery storage, there's plenty of examples around the country where people are already installing significant size battery storage facilities. And also there's a lot of developing technology in the area of different storage methods for storing energy. So I think in the innovation section of the plan, there's a great opportunity to pursue innovative storage technologies. And if we look to the success that we just recently had here over the opportunity grants around investments, it'd be a great way to drive technology development in the state around energy storage that would drive the jobs and businesses associated with them. So great work on the plan. Thank you. I sent the rest of my comments in by mail.
Great, thanks, Craig. Next up is Jim Sherman. Then after Jim is Norman Steffens. So, Jim Sherman, looks like we're having some trouble with your Zoom account. It says that you need to upgrade your Zoom. So like I said, you saw that earlier. You might have to jump out of the meeting, let your Zoom account update, and come back in and raise your hand, Jim, and we'll make sure we get your comments. So sorry about that. That does, like I said, happen sometimes. So you need to upgrade your Zoom account. Next up is Norma Steffens. So Norma, you should be able to make your comment. You can unmute your line.
It's Norman Stevens. And by the way,
Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's okay. I did pre-register this morning, so I just wanted to let you know so that can be fixed before you have another one of these in February. I registered, I don't know, about 8 o'clock or 8:30 this morning, something like that. In any case, I'm a former resident of Sterling Heights, Michigan, but I have lived in rural Michigan for well over 30 years. You could say that I'm a former member of the urban elite. I now live in Elmer Township, which is right smack dab in the middle of the thumb part of the state. In 2017, I organized a successful referendum that prevented NextEra Energy from irresponsibly siting 500-foot tall wind turbines in our community. The key point is irresponsibly sited wind turbines, which absolutely nobody, no environmentalist that's spoken here, or a Sierra Club member, or an urban member of the urban elite like I used to be, has even mentioned today. Upon request from other township residents and township officials, I've helped over a dozen communities draft protective wind ordinances that raise the ire of wind energy reps who want to install 50 or 60 wind turbines in a community. I'm in favor of wind developments if they are sited responsibly, which, contrary to wind energy representatives, are not cited responsibly. There have been 24 wind referenda in the state of Michigan since 2009, and every single one of them went against pro-wind, non-protective wind ordinances. The speaker earlier, I can't remember her name on this talk, mentioned that Iowa residents love their wind turbines. She is woefully misinformed based on what I just mentioned, 24 wind referenda, and all 24 have gone against weak wind ordinances. Iowa and Michigan, conflicted officials love their wind turbines. It's not so much the residents. The majority of the rural residents, as I just mentioned again, voted against wind turbines when given the opportunity. There are approximately 30 communities in Michigan that host wind developments, and each one of them had a conflicted official who received a direct financial benefit by approving wind developments. And townships without conflicted officials in Michigan do not host wind turbines.
1 more minute.
So as long as wind representatives are allowed to first harvest the officials and then harvest the wind, Michigan rural residents will push back against having 675-foot wind turbines installed within 1,200 feet of their homes. Members of the urban elite, members of the organizations like the Sierra Club, have little or no idea of the negative effects of irresponsibly placed wind turbines. You site those wind turbines safely and watch people disappear that are offering pushback in the state. As long as conflicted county and township officials, though, are allowed to draft irresponsible weak wind ordinances, Michigan will see that pushback. Members of the, in summary, and then I'm all done, following the siting recommendations of wind energy companies is akin to the fox writing the building codes for the hen house. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comment today, Norman. Colin Bohash is up next. Go ahead, Colin.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, I wanted to talk about the Ludington Power Storage Plant and Reservoir that was built between 1969 and 1973 at a cost then of $315 million. It was completed 49 years ago. As such, it is probably direly in need of upgrading and improving its efficiency. On their website, it shows 70% efficiency. At the same time, all the energy that is being stored there is probably coming from coal plants owned. This facility is jointly owned by DTE, and Consumers Energy owns a larger 51% and controls it. Consumers Energy has put a reduced energy period between 2 and 7 p.m. weekdays, June 1st to September 7th or 30th recently. And, you know, they want to claim that they're being efficient, and they want to claim that that storage facility stores wind energy, which is a good thing. It needs to be improved so it can do that better. But what it mainly needs is to have consumers take the cap off solar. Let everybody who wants solar have their energy, which, by the way, is generated mainly at the peak period of use for air conditioners when the sun is shining the hottest. And everybody knows that. So to pretend that solar isn't good, or to pretend that those people aren't paying their share of the grid, they actually own a piece of the grid. When they invest in solar panels, they are adding to the grid with real machinery. Okay, so Consumers is in error on that. I remember 10 years ago traveling in Utah, and their billionaire who owned all the Utah power companies used to put it up on billboards that people who had solar weren't paying their fair share, which was a lie. Those people actually own part of the grid. I rest my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Colin, for your comment today. Looks like our last person making comment today is actually on the phone. And this is the person, the phone number ends in 235. So you're unmuted, so you can go ahead and make your comment, and please make sure you state your name.
Hi, my name's Eric McCleary. I'm with Clean Water Action. I've been listening to the call since the beginning, and there have been some really great comments, but I just want to bring it back around to the fact this plan is to be done by 2050. That's not enough. COP 26 made it clear that that's not enough. We need to move this plan forward so that that we can reach 100% carbon-free electricity by 2035. That is the only feasible solution. And if we're doing anything less, it seems disingenuous. I'm speaking from a personal place. Thank you for taking my time, taking my comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for commenting today. We actually do have another hand up. Hand up is Brian Campbell. I don't know if, Brian, you already made a comment today or not. If this is a different Brian Campbell that did not make a comment, you can make another comment. If not, we go ahead. If this is a different Brian Campbell than the person that already commented. Okay, all right. So James, it looks like that's all we got for today.
Want to thank.
So if you want to go ahead.
Yep, want to thank everyone for joining us today. Really appreciate all the comments we received. Again, our next public comment period is scheduled for February 8th from 6 to 8 p.m. in the evening. Again, you can go to the Eagle website and you can pre-register to provide comments at that if you did not provide comments today. Again, appreciate any written comments we receive. All those will be kind of read and considered as we move on. But again, thank you very much for participating today.
All right, yeah, thanks for everybody for joining us and for your time today and staying late. We appreciate that. Reminder that we will be posting the recording of this session up on our Eagle YouTube channel as well as the climate webpage as soon as we have it ready to go. So thank you. Have a great rest of your day.